Not that I need this, my voice projects. That's what my mother always said, anyway. So, yeah. So, this panel of one, is basically how the comic industry works. That's a misnomer, actually. Because if I put how the comic industry doesn't work, you probably wouldn't come, you know? But we're going to talk about the disconnect between the medium of comics. Well, I was just going to put my iPad, hook it in there, and let my little bio thing run. Is that possible? For those people uninitiated. But they don't have an opaque projector, do they? For those who aren't familiar with my work or whatever, I am considered the co-creator of Iron Man, War Machine, Ant-Man, the Valiant universe, the Future Comics universe, among other things. You know, I've worked in the comic book industry close to 40 years as a writer, publisher, editor, artist. So I've been around the block a few times, you know, and I've run several companies. And I'm always very, very concerned with the state of the industry. Now, obviously you guys are all here, and you know it's like, the medium of comics, the culture of comics has never done better. Oh, look, you're all adaptive and everything. That's awesome. Okay. Turn the sound off.
Do you have audio?
No, I want the audio off. Okay, I just forget the thing about the sketches. I'm not doing any sketches, so when the sign comes up says sketches, we're done. All right. But it has examples of my work and the characters I've created and so forth and so on. There's no. Oh, really? Then we're done, aren't we? No AV for you. There's we don't have an opaque projector, do we? Okay, all right. Anyway, where was it? So, anyway, here's the very, very interesting thing about the industry that we love, right? Because as you know, in terms of the culture wars, in the last 5 years or so, we, the geeky people, have won. I mean, Hollywood is ours, right? We own it. And you can applaud, yes. It took forever. What's the last? Remember the older guys out here, how long it took to ever get a good comic book movie made, right?
Was there one?
A TV show or whatever, because they used to look down their nose at us. You know, this was just pap. It was trash. You know, it was not something they were interested in when they could do another cop show. You know, so things have changed considerably. What hasn't changed is the downward spiral of comic books themselves. And this is what concerns me. This is what we're going to talk about to some degree. Because as well as the medium is doing, with your favorite shows on television and your favorite movies and all this kind of stuff, comic book sales continue to decline. Now, there's a lot of hype about this book sold really well, that book sold really well. And to basically give you some idea of how the industry functions, I'm going to run you through that, some really boring shit really quick, okay? And then, oh, by the way, when you have a question, because we're all friends here, right? Just belt it out, all right? If you want to find out about Robert Downey Jr., you can ask me about that too, I don't care, right? But the point is, let's, don't hesitate if you have a question, just to raise your hand or whatever. The two major companies are corporate owned, as you know, right? Corporations don't look at individual titles or miniseries or anything like that. What they do is they look at units sold. And basically, when they make their projections, if they're a publicly owned company, you know, they have to give projections in terms of how many units are we going to sell in the first quarter, how many units are we going to sell in the second quarter, so forth and so on. So if you put out Star Wars and it sells 100,000 copies, see, it gets averaged in with Wolverine has sex with a bowl of potato salad, issue 1 through 4. All right? And you guys have all bought that, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's like, you're like, what the hell are they putting this out? I don't want to read, you know, nobody wants this, right? But they put it out. That all goes into like a bell curve. It all gets averaged out, right? So, and if you don't believe me, I happen to bring the numbers with me from sales from last month. Now, I didn't go through the whole bell curve, but I don't have to. I can go down. After the first 2 pages, our sales figures, we're down in less than 30,000 copies sold. These are major titles. These are Batman titles. These are stuff less than 30,000 copies. All right? The first 2 pages, the first like 50 books maybe, it's 44 books actually, are profitable. The rest of this, there's about 10 more pages of sales figures going down the list of every product sold is under 30,000 copies. You know, and personally, I can sit outside of Whole Foods with a pamphlet and probably pass out more than 30,000 of them in a day. You know what I mean? The problem is, like I said, it all gets averaged out. And the average comic winds up averaging at about 15,000 copies. What's up? That might work, but it's iPad 2. Is that going to plug in? That will plug in. Yeah. It's really crazy. Why don't we whisper? Everybody can hear us. We're mic'd. So that's okay. Here's the scary truth. Who has a calculator out there? Who wants to be my mathematician? You going to be my mathematician? All right. Here comes the scary stuff. All right. The average comic book costs, art and editorially, somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000 to produce. All right. You got that. The average comic now sells for what, $3.99, although some are actually $5, right? Well, let's go for $3.99, right? All right, Diamond the distributor, who has a vice grip on the industry, takes 60% of the cover price of that book.
Whoa.
You didn't know that?
Did not know that.
60%. The only person making money in comics is Diamond distributors, boys and girls, okay?
Wow.
All right. Now we're not including the cost of printing, which runs about $6,000 or $7,000. All right. Advertising, which will run you another $4,000 or $5,000. Overhead for the companies, which we're going to leave out of the equation. All right. Now you're selling 15,000 copies, right? At 60% off that cover price. I need you to add that up real quick.
15,000.
Right, $15,000.
Adding $3.99 or $5.99?
Well, let's do it at $3.99. They're going to go up to $4.99 soon, but like, let's do it at $3.99. The tension's just amazing. I always love it when you guys do this because I hate that.
59,850.
All right, right. All right, now take 60% off that.
That's minus $35,910.
So what we got left?
Yeah, $25,000.
All right, now we'll take the $13,000 off for, we'll take $15,000 off for, let's say David Finch is doing the book. Take $15,000 off.
10,000.
All right, now take another $7,000 off for the printing.
3,000.
Okay, do we need to go any further? You're getting my drift, right? Now there are ways that they compensate for that by gang printing. In other words, they print more because they print on those giant rollers. And so big companies like Marvel and DC, they can print 5 or 6 books at a time on these giant things, and then they just cut them and fold them and all that kind of stuff. And that saves on printing or whatever. But my point is the margins on comic books are so minimal. All right? Here's the other little frightening piece. I pulled it, I did this for you guys, okay? This is from recent news articles, right? And what I want is us to have a discussion about how to fix this, all right? DC Comics is down $2 million this year over projected figures for 2015. $2 million. First time in their history they have logged in a loss. All right? Bill Jamis, former head publisher of Marvel Comics, wrote a really interesting article about this. Basically, I'm not going to read you the whole thing. Well, actually, I think I will. Bill, because it's interesting. He says, Bill says, we know that comic sales numbers we see each month do not reflect actual readers, but rather the number of copies retailers order. As we already know, which is reinforced today, those numbers are often inflated by incentive programs, variant incentive programs, stunt publishing that artificially drives the numbers of copies ordered far above what readers actually buy, because if you sell one rare variant on eBay for $100 to idiotic speculators, it offsets the cost of 30 unsold regular issues. All comics ever needed to do to grow readership is to tell engaging stories over long term to get readers hooked on comics. But instead, big publishers focus on continually bilking the existing readership. You lovely people. For more money with these gimmicks, it can't last forever. Now, this is Bill Jamis talking. Now, he and I both we both run companies. He's absolutely right. He says it can't last forever, it never does. And while DC is showing possible signs of a crash, Marvel's about to embark on a large-scale repeat of DC's 2011 reboot plan, which, as we are seeing right now, resulted in a short-term boost and a long-term loss. Constantly rebooting your line leads to diminishing returns. Marvel seems to believe that they've hit on a formula where they can relaunch every year, but that can't possibly be sustainable. More likely, the lack of respect for history will simply give longtime readers a good reason to stop obsessively collecting long-running titles. This is coming from Bill. And that's the crazy thing, because we're all here, and it's like, man, people dressed like the Flash, and she's wearing my Iron Man on her chest, and we're, oh my God, everything is so good. But there is a disconnect between the comic book industry and the medium of superheroes. The medium of superheroes has become what comic books used to be, and there's a reason for that. But one other item about our poor retailers, and these are the guys I feel worse for, your local comic shop. I mean, do all you go to comic shops? Most of you do, right? This is from IDC2, one of the most respected numbers people out there. They say one other factor, this is a disclaimer they put on the numbers that they run every year. One other factor to consider in sales through Diamond and other comic distributors, which there aren't, are non-refundable to retailers. That means every comic book that your retailer buys, he's stuck with. If he pays, how much? 60% off cover price? How much is he paying?
Is that $23,000?
No, I'm gonna say, but the average comic after the retailer gets, he has to pay 60%.
Yeah.
So it's like,
$1.60.
right, okay. So retailer, $1.60. So he's got to make a profit here with that poor $1.60, right? That means there are a considerable amount of percentage of books unsold at the retail level, amounting to 20% overall. So when you hear the numbers, that this book sold X amount of that, 20% of that, that's $1.40, right, you said? Like if he took $1.40 out of his pocket, set it on the shelf, and stacked it up, and stacked it up, and stacked it up, basically out of his pocket forever. Because they can't return the books. And up to 20% of those books are not reaching the market. Well, look at this. You guys are awesome. This was a birthday present. Somebody did a video history of me in 3 minutes.
So what do you recommend for the sellers to do with that $1.50 on the shelf?
Well, you know what they do with them. You ever been to the 50-cent man?
Yeah.
It's like you cut your losses, right? But my point is, it's an unsustainable model. And there's a reason why that happened. As you know, those who are longtime comic fans know that after the speculator boom in the 1990s, the collectability of comics went out the window for the most part. All right, they weren't worth the paper they were printed on. So Marvel was actually in receivership, as you recall. They were in bankruptcy. That's why they made that horrible movie deal with Sony and Fox, you know, where they can't get out. They're just screwed, man, you know. And that deal, as I understand it, is they get a flat royalty fee. So if an X-Men movie makes $300 million, Marvel still gets the same amount of money as if it made $20. You know, they don't profit share. It was like the dumbest deal ever made. That's why Marvel Studios is trying so desperately to get those rights back. But they did that while they were in bankruptcy, right? So how's that work? Is it working out? This is my friend Mike Uslan, the Batman producer. He was awesome. He did my panel in San Diego. You know, it was like we've been friends since we were children. He's cool. Anyway, where was I?
Bad deal.
Bad deal. Yeah, they made just a terrible deal. So that's why they've been trying it. So once they were in receivership, and the numbers were declining rapidly, there was a decision made within the industry to start catering to the base. In other words, you guys, the hardcore comic book collectors, the older guys who have money and stuff like that. So they started writing and creating comic books specifically for you guys. The trouble with that is, in the days where I did, say, the Bronze Age, you know, the OG days, right? We were always told, the mandate was, every issue is the first issue. Because we were sold on newsstands to the general public. When I did Iron Man, for instance, all right, I got the book as a result of it being canceled. That's where they tried out new talent. You know what the numbers were on cancellation in that days? That was 1978. 90,000 copies. Which would have been a hit now. That would be like a hit. But that was cancellation range in that era. And that's how they would try, and they try out new talent, but because they had a contract with the mafia to distribute, you know, on newsstands, right? So they had to put out 12 issues every year of every given title. So they would pull John Buscema or John Romita, whoever, off, and they would put schmucks like me on, you know? And because we figured they couldn't hurt it because the book's going to get canceled anyway. And that's how I wound up being able to change Iron Man to what you know now, was I got a tryout on Iron Man because they had been canceled. You know, but we changed everything, and by the time the 6th issue came along, it was selling 300,000 copies a month.
As far as like cancellation numbers, what is cancellation number now? And are they factoring in digital comics into the sales, or is that another?
That I don't know about the digital sales, but I don't imagine if you're selling units sold, there are no cancellation numbers. First of all, how many regular series are there compared to miniseries? Which is the point I was going to get back to. About potato salad, you know, Wolverine having sex with a bowl of potato salad, that thing. But why you see an endless array of miniseries coming out is because the stranglehold the industry has on the retailers. Because they all work with a revolving debt, right? And this revolving debt, through Diamond, right? They basically buy the books on credit for the next month to put in the shelf so you guys can get them and blah, 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 blah. And hopefully you'll buy enough of them they can pay off last month's thing, blah, 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 right? So they also know that if they put out a #1 issue of something, that pretty much they can coerce the retailers into buying at least 15,000 of them. So if they look at their projected numbers and their numbers are down, what they do is they pull out Wolverine has sex with a bowl of potato salad. Wolverine has sex with coleslaw. Wolverine has sex, you know what I mean? It's like basically him having sex with every kind of food imaginable, and that's what you get. Endless miniseries of things you don't ask because they need units sold.
Right.
And they know that if they put it out, they can sell at least 15,000 of them and get their numbers up to their projections. So whoever's in charge doesn't lose their jobs.
Right. I know people who only collect number ones, actually, so.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is,
Right.
and that's kind of how they banked on this. But again, it's not a healthy business model. You heard what Gemma said there. You know, this is a guy who used to run Marvel. All right. Now, one of the things that I've stated time and again when I've had this talk is here is the downside. And if this gets too depressing, we'll talk about Robert Downey. Okay, I promise. All right. I got a great Mickey Rourke story too, if you want to hear it. But the downside of all this too is, like, I'll take Iron Man because that's what I'm mostly associated with. For as the older guys know here, I did the book for 120 issues or something. I mean, I did it a long time and took it from obscurity to being one of Marvel's top books. I never envisioned that it would be an international sensation that it is now. You know, because it's pretty amazing. I go around the world now doing, you know, appearances at cons, and Iron Man is huge everywhere, you know? And I knew that the character had reached iconic success when I read an article in a newspaper that somebody held up a bank in Florida and they identified the culprit as Iron Man. You know, apparently he was wearing a mask, and they knew what the mask was, you know? And I'm saying, yeah, it's become... So anyway, climbing the ladder up to success where it becomes part of the lexicon has a downside. The downside is once you've climbed the ladder, if you're storming the castle, you can kick the ladder over when you get to the top because you don't need it anymore. When's the last time any of you saw a Donald Duck comic? Well, no, I mean, but you know what I mean. Like, I know they people put out like reprint editions and stuff like that, but I mean, when's the last time Disney ever put out comic books of their characters?
In America?
Yes, in America.
They're everywhere in Europe. They're still really popular.
Right, but the point of it is, when a character reaches a certain iconic status where it becomes part of our lexicon, you don't need the comic anymore. Especially if the comic only sells 15,000 copies. And here's the danger, or the interesting thing about that. You know, there's a good side. Look at Guardians of the Galaxy and what James Gunn did. Basically, he took a comic that none of you guys wanted to read and turned it into a movie you all wanted to see, right? So there's an upside. It's like, okay, he took a crappy property and turned it into something that actually works and is now becoming part of the lexicon as well. But as you climb that ladder and you become part of the, you know, world lexicon of characters. I mean, everybody in the world knows Superman's origin. Let's face it, right? You know? And everybody now pretty much knows Tony Stark and the whole 9 yards with that. If you're looking at corporate thinking, and I've worked in corporations, and I'm sure some of you have, eventually they're going to look at these numbers. And somebody brown-nosing for a raise is going to say, you know, we could make more money just reprinting the gigantic library of stuff we have that spans 70 years rather than just keep putting out new books that only sell 15,000 copies. So there's a real distinct possibility at some point one of these two major guys may decide to stop publishing because it's just not profitable. I mean, if I was there, and the reason I say that, because if I was there, I would do it. You know, not that I don't love this stuff, but, you know, it doesn't make sense. You know, the gateway drug to comic characters has become the CW, you know, or your local movie theater. You know, comic books used to be that, and it's not anymore. Comics aren't even accessible. You know, it's a destination buy. It used to be that you could buy a comic book almost anywhere. On a spinner rack, in a grocery store, or anything like that. Now you have to get in your car and you have to drive to a specific place, and a lot of them, come on, let's face it, they smell like porn theaters, you know? It's like, not that I know what a porn theater is, but not all of them are great, you know? So it's not the same deal as before, but they're still operating with the same old business model. And that's kind of frightening to me because I love the medium. Like I said, I've worked in it my entire life. And I worked in Hollywood too, and I understand how it works. But here's the last piece of information I want to give you guys, and just to think about. And then we'll talk about solutions to this, right? Recently, I travel a lot. Just ask my girlfriend. Too much, maybe. I decided I wanted to watch Daredevil, the Netflix series, right? So, but I didn't belong to Netflix, right? So I joined Netflix, right? And I realized that it was only a couple dollars more than buying one issue of the existing comic book. You know? And then I went on to iTunes, I started looking. I could rent Spider-Man for the same cost as buying the comic book Spider-Man. And it's like, now we are competing with Hollywood for the same characters and the same money. You know? And to be honest with you, the Daredevil, it's better on Netflix than it is the comic book. You know? It's like, it's accessible to everyone, right? I mean, I always said, when I was doing Valiant, I said, if you're gonna give me an explanation about who this character, you're gonna create a new character, write an explanation about that my mom would understand, all right? Because that's what they do in Hollywood. You know, you wonder why they don't follow you guys exactly, like, God, why don't they give him the costumes like in the comic book? And why did they change his power as web shooters? Or they're not organic? And why do they do that? Because they have millions of people coming there. They have to make it palatable to them. And in their eyes, there's only 15,000 of you. You know? Who are they going to listen to? You know, and I know it's frustrating for you guys, the ones who really are purists and love this stuff. But you got to understand their point of view. Their audience is different than you. That's why they don't listen to you. You know? And we need to change that. You know? We need to change it. But yeah, right now I can go rent the last shitty Spider-Man movie. Oh, was that a review? Did I just slip up? I can go the less than exciting second Spider-Man movie for the same price as buying the comic book. So now if we're competing with Hollywood for the same money, for the same characters, that's a danger area too, because that's a battle we're going to lose. And I'll tell you why. And having been a comic book creator my entire life and created a lot of them, the comic book industry, the creators, are horribly arrogant people. You laugh, you know it's true. They constantly delude themselves into thinking that they are in the forefront of creativity. That's why we're going to do the X-Men our way, because Hollywood follows our lead. The X-Men came first, and blah, blah, blah. That's nothing to be further from the truth. Comics have always been a reflection of what's popular culture. I tell people an example. I go, I was there when Chris Claremont did Days of Future Past. The most popular movie in theaters at the time was Terminator 2, okay? It's like he was doing his version of Terminator 5 degrees to the left. You know? We always reflect what's going on in popular culture. That winds up in the comics. We don't set the trends, we exploit them. So, you know, but comic people still believe that, comic publishers still believe that they are the vanguard of creativity, and nothing can be further from the truth. You know, I mean, I give you James Gunn, you know, what he did with Guardians, because we never were able to pull that off in a comic book. He sure as hell did it in a movie, right?
Yeah. Before you move on to solutions, okay, let's...
Well, I don't have any. I was just bullshit.
Or talking, or at least spitballing about them and dreaming, because that's probably all it's going to be. Let's look at the Fantastic Four. Marvel chooses to cancel the series in comics to kind of get out of the way for the movie. The movie tanks. And now that everything's in competition, let's say Spider-Man gets canceled and they continue making Spider-Man movies. When those movies finally stop drawing viewership, how do we get back to the base?
Well, you don't.
Okay, so it's just law. It's just
well,
law.
Here's the thing, because what I'm saying is when they decided to cater to the base at the end of the 90s, comics were starting to be written pretty much by fans for fans. Since then, an entire decade or two has passed, and the people that tell comic book stories now really don't know how to tell stories to a mass market audience. That's the problem. And I've heard this from people time and again. Like, haven't you ever wondered why they could come out with like a Batman, Dark Knight, right? And Batman suddenly doesn't, and Batman makes $400 million at the box office. The comic sales don't go up an iota, right? There's a disconnect. One is they got to go to find the smelly porn comic shop, right? Because they can't just get it anywhere. And even if they download it online, it's totally different than the movie. In some cases, Spider-Man isn't even Spider-Man. He isn't the same guy that's in the movie. They pick up the X-Men books. It's not the same X-Men that's in there. Also, because there's a built-in presumption, because you are hardcore fans who are reading the 11th of a 20-part story, there's no introduction to what went before. There's no introduction of characters. So there's no way for you to jump on board and understand. So what Jameis was saying is Marvel's solution is to cancel everything and start it over again every year, which is, let's face it, pretty damn dumb, But if I was the king of comic books, the comic book world, which I'm willing to accept that title if you if you want to vote for me, the first edict I would send down is that every single comic book that has a successful movie should resemble the movie. Because obviously they got it right, we got it wrong. I mean, if I'm going to put out a Batman, I want it to be like the Dark Knight. If we're going to put out Spider-Man, I like to be like the Sam Raimi movies, not the other thing. But, okay, so there are exceptions. All right. And in Fantastic Four, I would just let them still cancel it, right? But see, that may all be a moot point. My point is, the numbers aren't growing. And the retailers are getting stuck. I mean, I know 3 major comic shops in the last month that have closed in America. Decent shops. But the thing is, you can only pile $1.40 on your shelf so many times before you wind up just carrying a huge debt load that you can't get out from underneath.
Well, very quickly, I think all the Marvel movies would have to do to help increase comic sales is almost do something like this in their title sequences.
Sell prints?
I think if you see the covers, I think if you show people the covers, because people are sheeple, especially the seething masses who make these movies billions of dollars. If you show them the covers, I think it gears them to at least being more aware that that's right, there is a book out there, because a lot of them aren't going to comic shops. Or even if you put the Marvel, go to Marvel Digital, subscribe to Marvel Digital afterwards.
Why do you think they don't do that?
Because, right. See, I'm speaking as one of the 15,000.
Yeah, it's like they want those dollars to stay with the movie. They don't want publishing.
Right.
Those 2 separate arms of the same company. They're not washing, scrubbing each other's back in the tub,
Which is foolish, but...
Well, no, that's my whole point. The whole thing is foolish in a way, because at the end of the day, who's getting screwed? Your neighborhood retailer and you. And it's because we are evolving, all right, as a society, as a culture, as a medium, as a culture. I mean, the comic book movie is now a genre, like the Western, the science fiction movie, the romantic comedy, which I love, except for Pretty Women. I hate Pretty Women. Hey guys, Julia Roberts is not sexy, right? Come on, let's face it. She's really not. Yeah, thank you. Yes. I try to explain it to women all the time. Women love her, guys don't. All right? But that's digressing. I could do a whole panel on that, to be honest with you, okay? I wouldn't let my daughter watch that movie because the message was, no matter how bad you screw up your life, some rich guy's gonna come and bail you out, right?
That's what it's funny.
Well, yeah, if you're raising a teenage daughter, it's not a great message you want to send out, though. Okay, that's all right, honey. Go ahead and fire up. You know, it's like what your gear will save you. You know. I mean, I raised a daughter. Like I said, I wouldn't let her watch that thing. You know, I said, you watch Alien, that's fine, but don't watch Pretty Woman. You know. So anyway, yes, sir.
So the area as I've studied comics over the years and the industry, one of the things I've seen occur is we went from the single issue model, which you wrote for
Right.
in the 80s and 70s and 80s. Those were the single issue where the publishers said every issue is somebody's first issue. You have to make sure you get an explanation in. Guys like Chris Claremont writing X-Men, they had to be masters of quickly getting everybody up to speed.
It took a talent to do that.
By the 2000s, we switched over to a model where readers were picking up graphic novels, they were picking up bound editions much more often, much more frequently than they were picking up single issues. And so the writers started writing for that because they didn't want to have to bog it down with all this explanation, so that every 22 pages you were getting an explanation of what Wolverine's powers were or something, like you do when you're reading like Marvel Masterworks and that sort of thing. So they've moved to that model. Would it make sense for the comic book industry to drop single issue sales as much as would break my
Well, you're actually
to a graphic novel
you're getting.
format?
I hate you because you just jumped onto my solution.
I saw you got the time.
You may leave now. And this is maybe not because comics will never go away, boys and girls. Okay, because just like novels, people always predicted, oh my God, when the iPads came out and the Kindles and stuff, that nobody would ever buy a book again. Nothing's further from the truth. The thing of it is, comic book pamphlets, the little flimsy pamphlet, it's not cost effective to make anymore. Also the fact that you guys are growing up and you expect more sophisticated material, you know? So if you've ever, how many people have ever been to a comic shop in Europe? Have you been to one like in France maybe? They're totally different than here, aren't they? They're amazing, aren't they? There are oak shelves, beautifully appointed. Everything is in hardback editions or whatever, and there's genres from romance to westerns to science fiction to whatever, to a wide audience, you know? And it has a high price point. And here's where book publishing differs from comic books. Because pay rates have been stagnant in comic books for creators for the last 20 years. At a book publishing deal, you get advance against royalties. They put out a book, all right? You go through book distributors, goodbye Diamond, you know? And you wind up in bookstores. The price point is high enough that even with a 50% off that, there's money to be made, you know, for everybody, right? And the point of it is, and also you can take that beautiful hardbound, all-contained story, whether it's Spider-Man or a science fiction novel or the adaptation of Pretty Woman, and you put it on the shelf next to your James Patterson novel with pride, and you don't have to stick it in a plastic bag because it's a book, you know, and it will last as long as you don't beat somebody with it. It'll last a really long time, you know. That's really where we have to go, you know, in terms of an industry. The little pamphlet thing is all fine and good, but it will be cost out of existence. Would you pay $7 for a comic book? I mean, just a shitty comic book, like the crap you get stuck with by. No, nobody would. We're getting to that stage where, you know, because you can rent the entire season of Arrow, I think, on iTunes for what, $4.99 or something? So, I mean, why would you go buy a single copy of Arrow if you hated the comic book? It's not very good. Why would you do that? So I'm saying, but a sustainable book publishing format, you bastard, is exactly where we want to go. Now, I've been told I only have 2 minutes left, so if we got a couple of questions, but look, trust me, that is sustainable. Like my friend here who's been to Europe and seen it, they've been doing it successfully there for 30 years in that format. You know, you hardly ever see a pamphlet comic in Europe, you know? And it's a wide variety of stuff that even my girlfriend would be interested in. There might be a comic book, about our romance. I might write one about us, with Julia Roberts as a guest star. Me tripping her down a flight of stairs. So yeah, I got time for one more question, then we're gonna have to wrap it up. I'm sorry I couldn't cover more, but you guys have a better idea how the comic industry works now, right? And although it's depressing, you are better informed, I hope, right? All right, what's your question? Make it a good one. Don't ask about Robert Downey either.
I'm just curious if you see a future where digital replaces the single issue and it's collectively, or is that not viable?
No, because let me ask you a question. Well, it's a rhetorical question. We still like to read them on the toilet, don't we? How many guys here have comic books stacked up on the back of their toilet? Come on, tell the truth. Tell the truth, come on. Yeah, we still like reading them on the John. They're portable, they're not electronic. You don't have to plug them in anywhere, It's like, I don't think the digital will ever replace that, And there's still the illusion of collectability, but who knows? In book format, maybe they will become collectible again. It's hard to say. But I think that's definitely where we have to go. I think that's what you have to ask for. But also, here's the other thing I'm going to beg you all to do. Don't be coerced into buying shit you don't want to buy. Resist it. Because you're still in control of this. Without you, they are nothing. Don't go to the movies. Don't go see Fantastic Four, especially if you already know the reviews and it's crap. Don't go see it, okay? Seriously, just wait till it can come on cable. Believe it, it'll be on FX before you know it. Just bite the bullet. That's what I do. Yeah. It will. It'll be on FX by Christmas. Watch, right? So, be patient, but don't buy the stuff. Don't support it. That's the biggest message you can give to these people. Quit giving us this crap. Give us what we want. And I just urge you all to do that. Thank you for listening and coming. I really appreciate it. By the way, you can download the sales numbers for any given month at a place called ivc2.com. So if you think I'm kidding, go home and do your homework.